walking crowds of people. Hello, this is kind of a continuation of the video I did like last week, but I'm finally getting digital crowds to a point where I'm happy with them. So I wanted to share some stuff. So this is, I think this is almost the first version of the first time we see Waterworks Market as I had it, 2 or 3 years ago. And you can see it's just a still render. I'm displacing it with a depth map so it kind of gets some parallax in there. Then I put some handheld stuff over it to make it look like maybe I just make the thing feel a little bit more alive. Added little steam elements everywhere and some bird elements. And I filmed my friend Chris and his kids on the green screen, so I dropped them in there in the hopes that it would make all of my architectural little people down here feel a little bit more alive, but you can see these modern women on the go are not going very fast. It always bothered me a little bit. I added a big bus here by Swift 502 on Blend Swap and added some little sci-fi bits to kind of try to distract from it. I was doing everything I could to try to make it feel as if it was in motion, but I was never super happy with it. And so, version 2 came a few years later. Here we go, and I think you guys have seen this, and maybe it's not as pretty as the still render, but it works better in the edit because it feels like you're arriving at this location, and it's kind of entering in, and my hope was that all of the parallax going on would hide from the fact that all of these people are just stationary photo scans. These are the photo scans of the people I did with the drone. And I tried to hide a couple people in there that were animated with shape keys, but they look like nightmares. And it's I tried to put buses and signs and stickers and everything to hide that these are not in fact moving people, but at the end of the day it still just looks like we're moving through a miniature full of tiny little stationary people. And also, who is that man? Oh, and also, any Dynamo aficionados out there have obviously noticed this 3D model of Axel Rubik's, but that is not canon, as he is currently, obviously, trapped in Shadow State 5. But this is my render from last night, and it's not perfect. It's not perfect. If you look at it close, you see people doing weird things, and there's little blips and things like that. But it's nothing I couldn't figure out how to fix. And yeah, this just feels more like a more lifelike crowd than, frankly, I ever thought I'd be able to do. It's just those same photo-scanned people, but with little walking shape keys on them. And so I'm gonna go through all of that right now, and let's get into it. Okay, so this is the scene, and this big object here is the emitter geometry that makes the people appear, and then I also have for the other physics stuff, walking ground. Yeah, these objects are all force field objects that keep them within their areas, and there's also a ground plane down here. So what I had to do, because these guys don't want to do steps, they want to stay perpendicular to the ground, and so if they're going up steps which are zigzag, they're going or they're jumping into the air, or they're clipping through and falling out, and it's just always a mess. And so I ended up creating another ground plane that was just a gentle slope that kind of followed all of the contours of the ground while not having any stairs or any big jumps. They do still, when they're going up the stairs, kind of slope like this a little bit if we look right here. Which is, a little bit weird, but not a deal breaker. But ideally, for a shot like this, I would take the most complicated part, which is the people, and kind of design the shot around that instead of shoehorning it in during the final stage like this. But there's some other stuff I like too. Like there's this train car here, and so I have this geometry set up ahead of it with a force field that's just pushing people out of the way as the train comes, which, yeah, it's kind of building up, I guess, a few too many people here. But it's a cool proof of concept. I have a goal object set up here, which everybody is kind of being drawn to a bit. But it isn't too obvious because I don't know. I'm trying to keep everybody from looking too much like zombies because it's we're already in dangerous territory. Here's a turbulence force field that's adding a bunch of random motion to everybody, and because this is the goal object, and this is all blocking geometry, I had a bunch of people getting stuck up here, so I set up a bunch of wind objects with a range, an influence range on them to just kind of push them out from this corner, and that actually worked that actually worked okay. So I want to show you real quick how to set up something like this on your end, and I've already talked about a bunch of this, but I just want to have it all in one video. So let's get into it. All right, so first, to beat it into the ground, we're gonna set up some shape keys for some characters, and this should work for most anything. You could model a low poly dude and projection map them onto a crowd of people to get a bunch of variety, or you can use a low poly photo scan like I did, or you could use a high poly person. You just would probably not be able to have as many instances of the people, but let's see. So I have this character. Again, it's kind of a nightmare scan. I'm going to create a base shape key, which is its default position, and a new shape key, which stores the difference data. So footstep, and I'm just going to scoot one step forwards. I have proportional editing on up here, so it's dragging the whole foot. Again, sorry, we're getting a little bit beginners here, but there we go. So we can go and give him a step. If we let the range minimum go to -1, it'll actually use the shape key in the other direction. So it looks like he's actually walking. So we can actually keyframe this. So down here in the timeline, I'm going to go to frame 0. And because I did this for like a bunch of characters, I moved this panel here, so I only had to go like this instead of back and forth. So hovering over that, I'm going to hit I, which adds a keyframe in the graph editor, and down here on the timeline. I'm going to go to frame 24, and to make it loop, I'm going to add the end keyframe. And then I'm going to go to the middle and change it from -1 to 1 and add that keyframe. So there we go. We've got a little very basic walk cycle. And with that selected, I'm going to hit Shift-E, make cyclic, which automatically adds a modifier to just keep him walking forever. And I did that for all of these people. Actually, what I did was the range minimum and maximum. I made -2 and 2, just so that if I want to, I can increase the size of the footsteps or decrease it like this. And that's something, once you have all the people walking around everywhere, you can it can be really handy to try to match up the speed of their footsteps with the speed they're actually walking. And so we can scale it vertically and they walk bigger, or scale it down and speed it up by scaling on that axis, or slow it way down by doing that. And it's just nice way to get control. And you can you can add more detail to this. Like, let's add a little bounce as he's walking. I'm going to turn off the walking, the footstep shape key, and I'm going to add in bounce. And that's just because when people walk, they kind of boo, boo, boo. Actually, I don't know, maybe animation majors would tell me that's not actually a thing they do. It feels true to me. So just I'll just squash it down just a little bit. So now we have just a little bit of a bounce here, and now I'll turn this one back on, and so let's see. When he is at maximum feet displaced, his head's as lowest. So I'm just gonna have it go from 1. Yeah, first I'll set these on every time he takes a step here. It'll have a keyframe. And then here in the middle, I'll just make him go taller. And now I can just hit Shift-E, make cyclic, and as long as that's as many frames, as long as this loop is 24 frames too, it should stay in sync. And so now there we go. That actually, you know what? Like, again, it always looks dumb up close, kind of, but if you get back, that's looking pretty good. I might have to go through and update all of these people to do that, because this is looking pretty good. Okay, so what you would do once you made all of these people, and again, to make them work right with Boids, you want to have it so that in top view, they're all facing the top of the screen, and then select them and hit Control-A, apply rotation. Otherwise, they'll be walking sideways and stuff like that, because the computer does not inherently know which way they're facing. Okay, so put all of these people in a collection. You can just hit M and create a collection, stick them in there, because that's going to be what the particle system is referencing. We can turn that off. We'll create a plane here, and that's where maybe. So there's a difference. You always have to have an emitter object, and that object doesn't have to render in the scene, but there's a difference between the emitter object and the ground. But right now they're going to kind of look like the same thing. So I'm going to go here to the particle properties, click new, and we can call this whatever, walking people. We get to pick the number of people. Right now it says they'll start appearing on the first frame and ending on the 200th frame, which is weird, so we'll have them both start and end. They'll just all appear on the first frame. Lifetime, I don't think there's any downside to them existing for a long time. And let's see, if we hit play, is it doing anything? Yeah, it creates a bunch of balls right from the get-go. We want people, not balls, so we're going to have it render not as these halos, but as a collection, which we already set up, and that is the walkers. So now it's 500 people falling to their deaths forever. Let's change the scale to be 1. That's good. And we'll change the physics to be boids, which again, I'm sorry I'm covering a lot of ground, but I've already talked about a bunch. But boids are I don't even know how to call it. It's like a kind of a physics system, kind of a basic AI system where things are attracted to each other, and it's just a bunch of forces that can surprisingly, convincingly simulate like life, like flocks of birds and things like that. And we're going to be using that combined with some force fields to make these people do what we want. So first, it doesn't know what they are, so they're flying off into the distance. And the thing that boids do by default is they try to stay close together. Like they try to stay with other boids, but with enough of like their own personal space. And so that's how you start to get these really organic behaviors where they'll turn into their own blobs and things like that. But we don't want them to fly, so under movement we're going to turn off flight and check land. And now, woo! They all just stay on the ground, but we've got a few settings to tweak. 1, they're all floating, and 2, as they turn, they're tilting like a motorcycle, which is kind of great, but also not great. So under miscellaneous, I'm just going to turn all of these down, and height, kind of be superstitiously, I'm not going to make it 0, I'm going to make it like 0.1. And just now that'll put him hovering a little bit above the ground, I guess. Actually, it looks like it's right on the ground. And look at that, we've got our people, and this is really lightweight because we're all instancing the same few low poly characters. It doesn't really bog down the computer. I could have thousands of these guys, and it would still probably be, well, right now they're all compact and so they're all colliding. But if I start with them separated, how do you do with 6,000 people? Look at that. All right, we've got 17 frames per second. Even that'll probably speed up as they separate. But and look at this. This isn't even baked or anything. This is just happening. That's wild. But here, let's bring it back down to something more reasonable. Okay, so we have our people. Under particle settings, I'm going to uncheck show emitter, which means ideally, if we render it, we won't, yeah, good, we don't see the ground plane, which gives us an opportunity to set up our own ground. So let's do that right now. I'm going to make a big old plane. I'm going to have it kind of hover down here a little bit. Woo. Going to subdivide it. Boop, 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 boop. And I'll just grab some random, using proportional editing again, I'm just going to make some nice Dr. Seussian ground lumps. What a lovely dream environment. I keep having dreams that I'm in my yard and I see a little trail in the trees and I find like weird office parks and waterfalls and stuff, and I'm like, oh, this is amazing, and then somebody tries to kill me. It's good times. Okay, so they all fall straight to the regular ground. So let's select our ground, and under physics, physics, check collision. And now, do you stick to the ground? Yes, you do, and you are such bouncy lads. Okay, I'm gonna try under particle, turning the stickiness up. Just, let's not have them bouncing. They're still bouncing. They're too bouncy. I could have avoided having this bouncy ground plane and probably saved myself a little bit of strife, but let's see if we can get this figured out here. Okay, why are you guys bouncing? Under the particle settings, let's start playing with some of these speeds here. Let's say max speed 2, turn down acceleration, There is a jumps option, which actually is kind of fun, but it means everybody's just bouncing all over the place, which could conceivably, I can imagine situations where that's actually kind of cool. This is not one of them, however. So turn that down, and let's see if we can figure out why. If I check allow climbing, what does that do? What I want is to kill inertia. So let's turn up damping here. Okay, there we go. So they settled for a second. You do want to turn up damping, and that's just because when they first fall, they're going to have a little bit of inertial problems. I wish I could hide this without also hiding them. I mean, I can just set it to be a transparent material, but then I have to be in some sort of rendered mode. But let's do that. We'll hop over into Eevee here, and if we hit rendered, and under the material settings, change the blend mode to alpha blend. There we go. The plane disappears, but we can still see all of our people. Oh, also want to turn the shadow to none. Where's my sunshine? There we go. Okay, this is a better. So they all fall, and I usually I'll wait until like frame 50 or so to start using them in an animation. So I'll just have my animation start on frame 50 because they do take a while, obviously, to settle, especially like when they're first separating and all that. They can be kind of zipping around. Okay, so right now they're kind of milling, and that's pretty nifty, but they're not doing anything particularly human-looking. Like, we want to guide their behavior. So first let me fix, since if we're going to have shadows, let's change the cascade size to something a little bit sharper. Yeah, there we go. Look at our little people. And let's also, actually, first let's check out the speed of their footsteps. Again, if we open up the walkers, oh, everybody's up in the air. But if we select the initial particle objects down here, remember we can change the speed of their walking, of their footsteps like this, and just scale it out, and they're all walking slow. So you just dial this in until it looks about right. And actually, one of the biggest things you could probably do is select control the particle system itself, and turn down their max land speed to be something, you know, nothing wrong with making them go slow. But let's keep them quick. Okay, frame 1000. All right, so let's put them in like a room. How dense is this? Woo! So right now they're a little too dense, so they're kind of, you know, getting a little skittery. And you can see what I was talking about earlier. As they're walking up hills, they are at an angle, which is a little bit of a bummer. But yeah, let's build a room. I was doing some experiments too with birds, seeing how well birds could avoid buildings as they're flying through, and it works okay. But you have to set up force fields to kind of guide them from being stuck behind buildings, which I'll talk about. Okay, so let's. In the case of the shot I was showing you earlier, I already had all the geometry there, and so I basically echoed it with other cubes and things that I didn't render, just to show. It was basically just barrier objects. But let's see. Here's the building here. We'll make like a little town square, I suppose. Here's the clock tower. It's the tallest clock tower west of the Mississippi, actually. Unless if you go far enough, then you're east of the Mississippi. That was always such a confusing thing. I'm like, it's a circle! A lot of that stuff is confusing when you're a kid. And it's like, I turn it to the right. It's like, what? What do you mean? What part? I'm not the first person to have that observation. I guess I didn't duplicate. Okay, here we go. So we've got our whole ground thing. And we have built the ground within the Walker's collection. I'm glad I did this, actually. It's a learning opportunity of how to make a fun city. No, let's find our cube, and we'll just bring it into the regular scene collection and not the people collection. Okay. Perfect. Let's turn up the ambient light a little bit too. Sorry I'm taking so much time just building the scene. I'm just kind of being chill. I'm usually like, oh, I have to start over. I have to make the whole thing so optimized. I'm just doing this. Okay, so we're gonna set up a force field object around these buildings here, very easily if we can remember how. Physics, force field. It's gonna be a force. It's not gonna be a singular point. We're gonna use the entire surface. You notice you could have like every vertice, every line. It lets you get really specific. But I think this should just do it right here. Yeah, every surface is just pushing them into the middle, which is kind of cool actually, but not exactly what we want. So let's limit the influence of that force. Maximum distance, and somewhere that's going, yeah, there we go, around the origin. It's going to give us a little indicator so we can see how broad that that range of influence is. So now we've turned that way down here. And so ideally, oh, yeah, they're being propelled away from these walls while casually walking around. This is pretty cool. And we can turn it up even more if we want to give it a little bit more leeway. Wow, these guys are very evenly distributed. So let's give them something to do. I'm going to create an empty here. Uh-oh, I did it again in that same collection. Here, let's make that not the active collection so things won't keep appearing in it. Okay, where's... oh! My keyboard is no longer working. Oh, it is. I'm just insane. Okay. So we're gonna have them chase this thing here. We're just gonna name it, you know, what's the thing everybody wants? A donut. And we select our people here, and under the particle settings, we're gonna go under Boid brain, wherein these are their rules. One tells them, hey, separate, and the other one's like, but not too much. And so we're gonna add a new one here, which is goal. And it's a hierarchy a little bit, and so right now getting the goal is the last thing on their mind, but we actually want to make it a little bit higher on the list, and this will just be the donut. And now ideally they'll start walking towards this donut. Yeah, look at that, they're all kind of going over to it. That's cool. And what's cool and also a little bit annoying about Boids is that they are you don't really control them directly. You just set up the parameters and hope that you get something kind of good. In this case right here, looking at this, I'm gonna turn down their personal space because I think, oh, okay, and now that they don't have to stay separated, we've freed up a bunch of space for them to go in there, and this makes them feel a lot more natural too because they're not all perfectly distributed. Okay, so things you might notice. They are getting stuck along these walls when they try to get there because they're walking this way, but they run into the force field. And actually, I'm a little bit annoyed that they are walking into that wall. So let's turn up the strength to be like 5. That'll push them away. Woo! Yeah, there we go. You can change the power to be like, I don't know, let's try 0.5. And that just makes it a little bit fuzzier. I don't know exactly why. Maybe 0.9. But it should make it so that line isn't quite so sharp. It could be, I still have the power or the strength up too high. There we go. That's nice. If we want to keep them like away from these areas, we can set up a new force field. Let's just say wind. It's appearing under the ground here. There we go, and right now it's blowing everybody in the entire world, but we can do the same thing, max distance, and just increase the range. And right now it's emitting as a plane from, it's basically this infinite plane that's blowing the wind. We want to change it from this point, so it's just coming from right there within this little circle here. So I think if I kind of set this up like this, but turn the strength down, it'll blow them out of this corner, but without blowing everybody else. And so that's where you kind of can start setting this same thing up to help other people who've gotten stuck, and you can start getting this kind of natural crowd feeling. Woo! One thing, if you do have a goal like this, like right now you can see their desire to just not get too close to other people is keeping them milling around, which is honestly looking a little bit silly. One thing you can do is you can change their angular velocity, and that's how fast they're able to whip around. If we turn this to 1, they'll just be popping around all the time. But if we turn it way down, they can't turn very quick, which means 1, they'll spread out because they can't turn around. 2, they're more likely to kind of crash into other people. But 3, yeah, you get more space between everybody. So, woo! Again, by frame 70, hopefully it's kind of stabilized. And again, this is probably, turning down their maximum speed is probably going to help the realism quite a bit, and matching up the footsteps. But this is looking pretty good to me. And yeah, they're getting a little bundled up here, but that's kind of what could happen in real life. I might turn down the distance here to be like 1.5. But yeah, I just don't want, most of the glitches I run into are where they're running into these boundaries, and you see just these little pops and things like that. And I think just tweaking these maximum distances and things like that, and honestly not having them have to interact with as many barriers can help quite a bit. Maybe turning down the strength here. I don't know, it's all physics are, yeah, turning down the strength helps some. It's just a matter of trying to find that balance. But yeah, so I'm going to be putting these walking people with all of the shape keys, and I'm a glutton for punishment, so I'm probably going to add their little bobs to add that additional realism for the tier 7 folks. But otherwise, yeah, this should work with a bunch of different stuff, and I'm just very excited to finally be able to do stuff like that. It's still a cheat, obviously, but it's less of a cheat than I'm used to. Final steps, once you have something you like, I like basically just watching it until I get a version that I like, and you can see it's creating this red bar down here. That's saving into the cache, and under the particle settings, you just go to cache and say current cache to bake, and woo, and now it's all baked in there. Everything else it doesn't know. Yeah, it hasn't calculated the physics yet, but that's how that works. I feel like I forget that step too often. Let's see, is there anything else I wanna say about this? I don't think so. Again, for the 10 billionth time, apologies that I'm covering a bunch of previously covered ground. I'm just very excited about this. I wanted to have a single video to be able to kind of point people to. So, all right, I hope you're doing well. The edit for the Dynamo episodes getting closer than ever. I'm talking with the audio people and all of that, and it's very, very, very exciting. We'll see when that gets started, but I will talk to you very soon. All right.